In a grand mansion sitting on the edge of the city, surrounded by high iron gates and trimmed gardens, there lived a little boy named Adrian, the only son of billionaire businessman Richard Montgomery. To the world, Richard had everything: luxury cars, global companies, and an estate that seemed too large for one family, but behind those shining walls, there was a silence that haunted every corner of that home. Adrian was only 6, yet he had never spoken a single word in his life. Doctors called it selective mutism, others thought it was trauma, but no one really knew the reason. His mother had passed away when he was just 2, and ever since then, he had shut himself away from the world. Tutors came and went, psychologists tried their best, but nothing ever changed. Richard, too busy with meetings and money, didn't realize that every night his son stared out the window waiting for someone to talk to him, not with pity, but with heart. Then, one rainy morning, a young woman named Elena arrived at the mansion. She was hired as the new maid after the previous one quit unexpectedly. She was in her early 20s, full of warmth and quiet determination. She wasn't from a wealthy family, she had grown up in the countryside, raising her younger siblings after losing her parents. When she entered that mansion for the first time, she could sense the emptiness. It wasn't just the cold marble floors or the echoing hallways, it was the sadness that lingered in the air. On her first day, she saw Adrian sitting alone by the window in his pajamas, holding a toy car in silence. She smiled softly and said, "Hey there, that's a cool car," but Adrian didn't even look up. The other staff whispered that he never responded to anyone, not even his father. "Don't waste your time," one of them warned. But Elena didn't believe in giving up easily. Every morning, she greeted him, told him stories while cleaning his room, and even left little origami animals on his desk, a paper bird one day, a paper dog the next. Slowly, she noticed something: he had begun to look at her, even if he didn't speak. One afternoon, while the thunder rolled outside, she found him sitting under the piano, trembling. Instead of calling anyone, she sat beside him quietly, humming a lullaby she used to sing to her brother. The boy didn't move away. When she started folding another paper animal, this time a fox, he reached out his small hand and touched the paper. It was the first time he had ever responded to someone. The next few days, she continued to make those little creatures, each one a silent bridge between them. Adrian started following her around the house like a shadow, never saying a word, but his eyes began to carry a spark that wasn't there before. The mansion, once a cold museum of wealth, began to feel alive again. Richard noticed the change but couldn't quite understand it. "How did you get him to respond?" he asked one evening, watching his son sit beside Elena as she read a fairy tale. "I just listened," she said simply. That night, Richard stood outside his son's door, hearing the faint sound of Elena's laughter mixed with Adrian's soft breathing. For the first time, he wondered if love, not money, was what his house had been missing all along. A week later, Adrian fell sick with a high fever, and panic spread through the household. Richard canceled all his meetings and stayed by his bedside, but the boy didn't respond to him at all, only to Elena. When she placed a cool cloth on his forehead and whispered, "You're safe, little one," Adrian reached for her hand and held it tight. It was a moment that melted even Richard's stern heart. The doctor said it was just a viral fever, but Elena stayed up all night, refusing to leave his side. By morning, when Adrian finally opened his eyes, she smiled, and for a second, he smiled back. That smile was small, shy, but real, and it broke through years of silence. When Richard saw it, something inside him shifted. He realized that this young woman had done in days what experts couldn't in years. As the days went on, the bond between the maid and the millionaire's son grew stronger. She taught him how to draw, how to bake cookies, and how to express feelings without words. Sometimes she'd say, "You don't have to talk to be heard," and he would nod, listening with those deep blue eyes. But one fateful evening, everything changed. Richard returned home early from work to find Elena on the floor, laughing as Adrian climbed onto her back pretending she was a horse. For the first time in years, the boy's laughter filled the mansion, pure, loud, and full of joy. But before she could realize it, Richard stood in the doorway, shock and confusion clouding his face. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted. The laughter stopped. Adrian froze, his tiny hands gripping her shoulders, and Elena's smile faded. The silence that followed was deafening. The boy looked from his father to Elena, tears forming in his eyes. And then, for the first time in his life, he spoke. His voice was soft, trembling, but clear as day. "Don't shout," he said. The entire house seemed to stop breathing. Richard dropped his briefcase, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had just heard his son's voice, the voice he had been waiting to hear for 6 long years. Elena turned slowly toward Adrian, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "You did it," she whispered, her voice breaking. Richard stood there, speechless, his heart pounding with guilt and gratitude. But little did he know, this moment was only the beginning. Something much deeper, something that would soon test the limits of love, loyalty, and truth, was about to unfold in their lives. As the night deepened, Adrian slept peacefully for the first time in years, holding the little paper fox close to his chest. Elena sat by the window, looking out at the stars, unaware that the next day would bring a storm that could destroy everything she had just healed. To know what happens next, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for Chapter 2, because the story of how love broke the silence has only just begun.